U.S. and Japan ready to demonstrate great power in the South China Sea. Japan and the United States plan operations for a joint response by their armed forces to the Chinese military to the Senkaku Islands, government sources said on Saturday. Tokyo and Washington have discussed how to respond in an emergency on or around an uninhabited island in the East China Sea, said the source, and aim to complete a craft plan in March. Administration of U.S. President Donald Trump said that America's commitment to defend Japan under Article 5 of the two countries' security agreements was extended to the Senkaku Islands. The article requires the United States to help protect areas under Japanese rule in certain cases. But the U.S. government has repeatedly said it will not take a position on the issue of sovereignty over Japanese-managed islands, which China claims are called Diaoyu. The plans drawn up consider special situations such as the landing of Chinese fishermen who landed on the islands, and the Japanese self-defense forces which need to be mobilized after the situation exceeds the capacity of the police to respond, according to sources. The self-defense forces have learned how to respond to this. The focus of intergovernmental talks is how to combine the capabilities of the U.S. military attack, said the source. Given that military organizations always need to assume the worst possible situation, it is only natural for the two countries to work on the plan to balance China, said Bonji Ohara, former naval attaché at the Japanese embassy in Beijing who is now a senior partner at Sasakawa Peace Foundation, a Japanese think tank. Negotiations between Japan and the United States have occurred mainly in the new framework created by the 2015 defense guidelines, called the Bilateral Planning Mechanism, or BPM. The guideline stipulates that the SDF and the U.S. military will conduct bilateral operations to fight ground attacks in Japan through land, air, maritime or amphibious forces. The two countries have planned joint operations in special situations on the Korean Peninsula and other situations. Meanwhile, the two countries held their biggest combat preparedness exercises in and around Japan, with U.S. fighter jets competing in the Western Pacific on Saturday when nuclear-powered USS Ronald Reagan joined Japanese destroyers and Canadian warships. Japan and the United States have mobilized 57,000 sailors, Marines and pilots for the Keen Sword biennial training, 11,000 more than in 2016 with air combat simulations, amphibious landings and ballistic missile defense exercises. The Japanese contingent, consisting of 47,000 personnel, represents 1/5 of the national armed forces. We are here to stabilize and maintain our capabilities if needed. Training like the sharp sword is exactly what we need to do, Rear Admiral Carl Thomas, commander of the Carrier Strike Group, said during a news briefing on Reagan's estimates when a fighter aircraft 18 thrown from the flight deck above it. 8 other ships joined the aircraft carrier to exercise anti-submarine warfare in a show of force in waters that fear Washington and Tokyo will increasingly be under Beijing's influence. The U.S.-Japan alliance is very important for stability in this region and the wider Indo-Pacific, Rear Admiral Hiroshi Ogawa, commander of the Japanese contingent, said on the ship Reagan based in Yokosuka. Reagan is the largest U.S. warship in Asia, with a crew of 5,000 sailors and about 90 F-18 Super Hornet fighters. The Canadian Navy supply ship also took part in the Keen Sword, along with the frigate who sailed with Reagan on Saturday. Canada's participation took bilateral exercises which began in 1986 into the world of multilateral training, Canada's defense attaché in Japan, Captain Hugh Canuel, said in Tokyo. Participation in the Keen Sword, he added, reflects Canada's desire to have a military presence in Asia. Canada is not the only Western country that wants to take on a greater security role in the region. Britain and France also sent more ships because China's military presence in the South China Sea grew and its influence on the Indo-Pacific and its main trade routes expanded. Observers from Britain, France, Australia and South Korea will also monitor Keen Sword, which starts on Monday and ends on Thursday. Growing foreign interest in Asian security, including the development of North Korean nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, coincides with Japan's greater desire to support its regional diplomacy by showing military muscle. Tokyo this year sent its biggest warship, the helicopter carrier Kaga, on a 2-month tour in the Indo-Pacific region, including stopping waving in the Philippines, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India and Singapore. The 248-meter (813.65 feet) Maritime Self-Defense Forces and 2 destroyers also conducted training with Japanese submarines in the South China Sea. At the same time, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has involved China in dialogue to maintain peace between their military in the East China Sea and to enhance economic cooperation between Asia's 2 main economies. Amid the friction of trade with Washington, Abe last month traveled to Beijing, the first trip by a Japanese leader in 7 years, for talks with President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Li Keqiang. Abe told them that China and Japan shared responsibility for regional security, including dealing with North Korea's problems. Japan, however, still sees China as a great power that is far greater and more challenging than Pyongyang because its expanding navy consolidates control of the South China Sea and roams farther into the Western Pacific and Indian Ocean. Beijing this year plans to spend 1.11 trillion yuan, $160 billion, on its armed forces, more than 3 times that of Japan and about 1/3 of what the U.S. pays for the military to help defend the Japanese islands. Keen Sword remains an expression of the commitment of allies and partners who are of the same mind. To really see what we can do in terms of demonstrating advanced capabilities together to ensure peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, U.S. Navy Operations Chief Admiral John Richardson said Thursday from Australia during a telephone news briefing. Source: japantimes.co.jp. Thank you for watching and hearing the latest military news. Keep up to date with the latest military news on the Update Defense channel. Hope you enjoy it.